transfer fees in football have gone a little bit wild in recent years. From Real Madrid outspending the big Serie A sides during their Galacticos era, to the flooding of cash into clubs like Chelsea, Manchester City and PSG, the transfer record has been smashed 8 times since the start of the 2000s, climbing from £32 million at the beginning of the millennium to £198 million when Neymar joined PSG in 2017. It seems impossible for the degree of inflation to be sustained over time, but already this summer we have seen Romelu Lukaku join Chelsea for £97.5 million and Jack Grealish seal a move to Manchester City worth a British record £100 million transfer fee. Over 3 years ago, I made a fun throwaway video speculating as to what 7 legends of the game might be worth now, or in 2018, as it was then. Last year, I made a very belated second instalment, and now I've decided to make a third. So, I suppose this could be becoming an annual series, if it proves to be popular at least. Feel free to check out either of those 2 previous videos at the end of this one if you like. I'll try to remember to leave a couple of links down below in the video description and in the end screen of today's video. A very quick clarification for those of you who haven't watched either of those previous videos or might just have forgotten. I am valuing the players based upon what I think they would be worth now based upon their own actual careers when they were aged 25. That means that some players' values will be inflated or deflated depending upon whether they peaked around that age, sustained any kind of major injuries, or had any other life events going on that might have affected their price tag. Some people respond to this criteria by asking why I don't just quote what I think would be the player's valuation at their respective peaks. But since some players peak at 18 and others well into their 30s, and value is so intrinsically tied to age in football, I think that would be a worse system. It's also more interesting this way because it means we get to take a snapshot of a player's career and analyse what was going on in their life at that moment, their ups and downs, and so on and so forth. Oh, and Neymar was 25 when he joined PSG for a world record fee, so that gives us a good benchmark. So yeah, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, follow me on Twitter at HITC Sevens if you want to send in suggestions for similar videos in the future, and without further ado, here are 7 more legends of the beautiful game. What would they be worth now? Gerd Muller, £250 million. It is very sad that Gerd Muller's passing is actually, in part, what prompted me to make this video, because I was acutely aware that I hadn't yet mentioned it on this channel, and Muller is far too pivotal a figure within the history of the game for his passing to go unmentioned. I made last year's edition of this series, shortly after the passing of Diego Armando Maradona, whose death brought the world of football to a standstill, for understandable reasons. But the rather more muted response, outside of Germany at least, to the death of Gerd Muller does not do justice to his standing within the game. You can count on one hand the number of better centre-forwards than Gerd Muller in the entire history of the sport, a man who scored 654 goals in 716 games at club level and an incredible 68 goals from just 62 caps for West Germany. Neither the tallest nor the most athletic looking of centre-forwards, over short distances, Muller was absolutely lightning quick. His pace was deceptive, which only served to make him even more devastating, and his powerful headers, pinpoint accuracy, and born striking instincts would have made him one of the most lethal strikers on the planet in any era. Muller turned 25 midway through the 1970-71 campaign, in which he scored 39 goals in 47 games, and in his last full season before turning 25, he scored 42 goals in 38 games for Bayern Munich, as well as scoring 10 goals in 6 games to win the Golden Boot at the 1970 World Cup. Those feats saw Muller win the 1970 Ballon d'Or, and there wasn't a better out-and-out centre-forward in world football at that time. If Romelu Lukaku is worth £97.5 million at the age of 28, and Harry Kane even more at that same age, I have little doubt that a 25-year-old Gerd Muller would have to break the world record transfer fee, which currently stands at just shy of £200 million. I've given the fallen great a price tag of £250 million, which would bizarrely probably represent a good piece of business in this day and age, given that, at 25, Muller's best football was still ahead of him. Muller died late last week, aged 75, following 6 years living with Alzheimer's disease, a condition that is all too prevalent among footballers, particularly of his generation. Wayne Rooney, £200 million. Sticking with centre forwards in the early parts of this seven, Wayne Rooney certainly wasn't an out-and-out centre forward throughout his entire career like Gerd Muller, but he was playing there at the age of 25 and he was scoring goals almost as frequently as the German. It's no secret that Wayne Rooney played his best football between the ages of 18 and 28 before succumbing to an earlier decline than most, but that didn't stop him from becoming both England and Manchester United's all-time leading goal scorers. Rooney turned 25 at the beginning of the 2010-11 season, having scored 34 goals in 44 games in the previous campaign. Following a couple of seasons where he often played out wide, Rooney had moved central following Cristiano Ronaldo's move to Real Madrid in 2009, and he actually scored more goals that season than Ronaldo did in his first season at the Bernabeu. Rooney won the PFA Players Player of the Year award and the PFA Fans Player of the Year award at the end of that season, which was a measure of his talents at that time. And in truth, that was probably Rooney's peak. With that in mind, I've given him another world record-breaking valuation, £2 million above the fee that PSG paid for Neymar 4 years ago. But I think it is thoroughly deserved. Rooney was not as bewildering or gifted on the ball as the Brazilian, but his impact upon the totality of a game, through his goals, assists, and work rate, at that time was extraordinary, and any team in the world would have fought tooth and nail to have him in their ranks. Neil Franklin, £90 million. Hey, come on, give me a break. It's been a while since I last mentioned Neil Franklin on this channel, and I seem to recall a number of you requesting a Franklin valuation in the comments section of previous iterations of this series. More recent subscribers to this channel may not know, but Neil Franklin is a man who had both a fascinating and enormously influential, but also rather tragic football career, which I was fortunate enough to be able to detail in an authorised biography of him, which took around 3 years to write and research. I might as well give it a plug at this stage by letting you know that you can order a copy via www.englandsgreatestdefender.com, and it is not to be confused with this book, which, coincidentally, just so happened to come out about a year after mine. Anyhow, without giving away too many spoilers for those of you who haven't read the book and wish to do so, Neil Franklin turned 25 midway through the 1947-48 season, which was only the Football League's second season following the end of the Second World War. However, even by this age, Franklin was almost universally regarded as being not just the finest centre-half in England, but in all of Europe. A ball-playing centre-half in the truest sense of the term, Franklin had a deep-rooted hatred of hitting the ball long or of man-marking a centre-forward, preferring to sniff out danger, defending on the front foot, and instigating attacks through his outstanding ability on the ball and effortless range of passing. He was a centre-half born to play in the 21st century, and given the fees that we have seen exchanged for central defenders in recent years, I don't think that a £100 million plus valuation would be totally unreasonable. I restricted myself to a £90 million price tag purely on the grounds that I think there is a slightly lower ceiling in terms of valuations for defenders, and Franklin hadn't won a major trophy at the age of 25. Ronaldinho, £215 million. Similar to Wayne Rooney in some respects, Ronaldinho peaked relatively early in his career and was probably at the peak of his powers at the age of 25. One of the most gifted footballers of all time, at the age of 25, Ronaldinho played football as though the ball was glued to his foot. Whilst playing with a smile that seemed to be permanently plastered on his face, he also put a smile on the faces of almost all who watched him in action, even receiving a standing ovation from Real Madrid fans whilst playing for their bitterest rivals. Ronaldinho turned 25 2 months before the end of the 2004-05 season, and he would go on to win both the Ballon d'Or and the FIFA World Player of the Year awards for 2005. There was no bigger star or better player on the planet at that time than Ronaldinho, and though he would be sold by Barcelona just 3 years later and would never quite be the same player again, no one was to know that in his prime. For the third time in this seven, I think he would set a world record transfer fee at 25. Breaking the £200 million barrier. It's easy to say that if Jack Grealish is worth £100 million, then surely Ronaldinho would have been worth £500 million or something crazy like that. But of course, transfers don't really work in that way, and there is an upper limit for the amount of money that any club would pay for even Lionel Messi or Pele in their primes. Nonetheless, Ronaldinho's peak is among the finest we have ever seen in the sport, so I think a price tag of £215 million is more than deserved. George Weah, £78 million. I wanted this seven to have a fairly representative range of different eras, positions, and geographies. Lacking in any players from outside of Europe or South America, and lacking in central midfield, I wanted to include Congolese legend Paul Bonga Bonga, who somehow still hasn't featured on this channel. Unfortunately, there are no images of Bonga Bonga in the Getty database, so I went for a much better known legend of the African game instead. George Weah is the only African footballer to have won the Ballon d'Or, the only African footballer to have been named as the FIFA World Player of the Year, and, to date, the only African footballer to have been elected as a head of state. Yes, the 25th president of Liberia has had an eventful career, to say the least, both on and off the pitch. On the pitch, Weah was among the first of a new breed of centre-forward, incredibly varied in his play. Mesmerising on the ball, quick, strong, intelligent, he could score goals, create goals, and run a defence ragged for a full 90 minutes. Born and raised in a slum in Liberia, it was Arsene Wenger who first gave Weah a chance to shine on the biggest stage at Monaco, bringing him to the Principality whilst Weah was playing in Cameroon. Aged 25, Weah had just begun the last of his 4 seasons with Monaco, having scored 18 goals the previous season, and winning the Foreign Player of the Year award in Ligue 1. He ended up joining PSG for close to £6 million in 1992, which was a little under half the world record fee at the time. I suspect he would command somewhere close to half of the record fee now as well, at the age of 25, so I have priced him at just under £18 million, and he would be an absolute bargain for that fee. Philipp Lahm, £80 million. A modern-day legend, Philipp Lahm only retired in 2017, but his status as an all-time great had been secured some time before that. In all my life, there are few fullbacks who I have watched who have made fewer mistakes than Philipp Lahm. A footballing perfectionist, his decision-making was flawless, his reading of the game was superb, and his tackling almost always inch-perfect. Initially deputised at left-back due to injuries at Bayern Munich, before becoming the best right-back in the world for at least 2 seasons, Lahm was later moved into holding midfield, further utilising his intelligence and ability on the ball. He was very much a fullback at the age of 25 though, turning 25 during the first half of the 2008-09 season, and that means that he has to be valued as a fullback. By that stage, in November 2008, Lahm had already made the All-Star team at a World Cup, the team of the tournament at a European Championship, and been named in the UEFA Team of the Year on 2 occasions. His best football was still ahead of him, at least as far as I'm concerned, but the Magic Dwarf, as he was known, was already among the best in the business in his position. As with Franklin at centre-half, there is a lower ceiling for fullbacks, which restricts Lahm's valuation. João Cancelo is the most expensive out-and-out fullback in the world right now, I believe, at £60 million. Meanwhile, Lucas Hernandez, who can play at fullback or centre-back, set Bayern Munich back £68 million. I think Lahm was much better than both. Though, as I say, he wasn't yet at his absolute best at 25, so I have slapped an £80 million price tag on his head, which, again, I think would be a bargain in this day and age. Roberto Baggio, £199 million. Roberto Baggio is an interesting inclusion in this 7, since he is someone who did actually set a world record transfer fee, though that move arrived a couple of years before Baggio turned 25. Arguably the greatest Italian footballer of all time, and among the most gifted football players that the continent of Europe has ever produced, Baggio is nicknamed the Divine Ponytail due to his incredible skill, his Buddhist beliefs, and, well, the fact that he had a ponytail. Baggio was just 23 years old when he broke the world record transfer fee, which had stood for 3 years, by £2 million, joining Juventus from Fiorentina for an £8 million fee. It was one of the most controversial transfers in the history of the Italian game, owed to the bitter rivalry between the two clubs, and when Baggio moved, there were riots in the streets of Florence in which more than 50 people were injured. When Juventus won a penalty against Fiorentina in a subsequent clash between the two teams, Baggio refused to take it. His replacement, Luigi de Agostoni, failed to convert from 12 yards out, and when Baggio threw a Fiorentina scarf into the crowd after being substituted and declared that he would always be purple in his heart, it didn't go down particularly well in Turin. Baggio did eventually become a huge success at Juventus, and by the time he turned 25, he was more than 18 months into life in Turin, where he scored 27 goals from the number 10 position in his debut campaign. There are some similarities between Baggio and Neymar, and I actually think they would command very similar fees at the same age. If you were to sign Baggio for £199 million, as I have priced him, at the age of 25 and his career followed its real-life trajectory, you would get very mixed results. The following year, Baggio won the Ballon d'Or and was voted the best player on the planet. And in 1994, he was probably the best player at the World Cup in the United States. However, following those two outstanding seasons, the brilliant Buddhist playmaker began to suffer increasingly frequent knee injuries, an issue that had plagued him since 1985. So that is it for today's video and my 2021 legend valuations. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, since I don't seem to talk about legends of yesteryear as frequently as I once did, and even though these videos are a tiny bit silly, they are still fun to think about, and it gives me the chance to go and watch clips of great players, chart their careers, and pluck what is, hopefully, a fairly reasonable figure out of the air. Thank you all, as ever, for watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed today's video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for HITC Sevens. You can also find me on Twitter or Instagram by the username at HITC Sevens on both, should you wish to do so.